Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Hall of Famer Bob Berry ruled Milwaukee's airwaves in the 60s and 70s. He spoke with countless musicians and celebrities over the years. Bob collected remarkable recordings of these encounters, which he's now sharing with the public. Here's Bob.
We all know and love the nearsighted cartoon character, Mr. Magoo. Jim Backus told me how he developed that identity. He started his career in radio on CBS as the rich Hubert Updike III on the Allan Young Show, and later on TV as the super wealthy Thurston Howell III on the 1960s sitcom Gilligan's Island. He owned many other radio TV credits between 1948 and 1989. He will explain what he had to do at that time to make more money in radio.
Jimmy, you worked in radio at one time, didn't you? On the daytime serials, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, I started out in the Depression, which I'm sure some of your listeners might remember with good memories. And as a matter of fact, my mother and father were married and lived in Milwaukee for a while.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Where? What side of town? Do you know?
I was conceived there, but if it wasn't, I came awful close. I really grew up in Cleveland. I consider myself a Clevelander because that's actually where I was born.
I see.
And then I went to New York and tried to be an actor, and I came back to Cleveland, got a job. I don't mean this in any way putting anybody down as a radio announcer. But in those days, a radio announcer got $19 a week.
Well, we get 21 now.
I guess, yeah, the price has gone up a little.
Right.
And then I went into to radio as an actor, and I was at one time I was doing between 35 and 40 network shows a week. I was David Harem's lawyer. I was Stella Dallas' son-in-law. At one time, I had three running parts on a daytime serial.
I'll be darned.
We used to run from one to another. It used to take us an hour and 15 minutes to do one show. We'd walk in, we'd read it through, we'd get up on our feet, we'd do a rough reading, once address with the sound effects, and then we'd put it on the air.
I can remember my mother listening to Stella Dallas.
Oh yeah. I was haughty Richard Dick Grosvenor, boy. I was not a very nice fellow. Then I did Gangbusters. You remember Gangbusters?
Oh yeah, right.
That's where Magoo came from.
Is that right?
Yeah, because in those days, and they're coming back to them. You know, there's a lot of radio dramatic stuff is going back on the air. You had to do what was called a double part, Bob. In other words, the union, AFTRA, or it was AFRA then, if I hired you, you had to play yourself, but you also had to throw in, unless you were a big star. And in those days, nobody ever got any billing, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it never said starring anybody.
Yeah, right.
And that was carefully planned because once you were starred, you could demand more money, and the only way you could make money was by doing a lot of shows. And so to get a job, you had to do, like I would play the FBI man, and I'd walk into a store, let's say, I'm looking for so-and-so who used to work here, and have you seen him? And then I would have to sometimes play a scene with myself. Like, I don't know, he was in here. Fellow, you mean with your straw hat? And I had to get as far away from my own voice as possible.
And how about Rebel Without a Cause? Was James Dean really the actor?
He really was I think had he lived, he would have been one of our great actors. He was absolutely, he was just beginning to tap what he had on file. And most people don't realize or understand that Jimmy was a very, very accomplished mimic and comedian. Between takes on Rebel, he used to do nightclub bits. You know, he would do all the so-called, as we call, shtick. You know, the obvious Cagney and Bogart. And in the picture, if you remember, in Rebel, he imitated Magoo. He did one line as Magoo, and even though he was very young, he realized that he was a very big star. And when he did that scene where he did one or two lines as Magoo, an executive from Warner Brothers came down on the set and said to him, Mr. Dean, even then they had to call him Mr. Dean. He said, we understand you're doing an imitation of Mr. Magoo, and Dean looked at him, and he says, yeah, I guess I am. I wasn't aware of it. And he said, well, look, he said, as long as you're this is Warner Brothers, and you're under contract, would you mind making it Bugs Bunny?
Okay.
Dean literally threw him off the set. You get out of here.
I don't believe that. Isn't that something?
What happened was we started to shoot Rebel Without a Cause in black and white, and we were shooting 2 weeks, and we had to shoot it at the Easter holiday so we could get into the high school, to where the kids, the high school scene where the kids were on vacation. And we finished those shots, and then the reports from East of Eden came in. And he had become a star overnight.
I think most of the younger people probably remember you from Gilligan's Island, which was very successful for you, right?
Yeah.
The Millionaire.
We made about 4 years worth. We made maybe close to 100 of them. And an actor gets paid the first 6. So people look at me and think, my gosh almighty, I must be the richest guy in the world, which is not true, because they got the 6 runs and then it reverted to them. So those are all, as we say, on the house.
Hi there, this is Jim Backus, a very good friend of your friend and mine, Bob Berry, of WOKY. That's pretty hokey to call it wokey.
Bob Berry.
Thank you for listening to Bob Berry's Unearthed Interviews. Be sure to subscribe and rate our podcast on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find all the episodes at WisconsinBroadcastingMuseum.org. Check out Bob Berry's book, Rock and Roll Radio Milwaukee. Book sale proceeds support Angels Kids Fund and Donate Life Wisconsin. The preceding program was made possible by a generous contribution from Terry Bond.